Today on the Plant Cunning podcast, we are super excited to have Lisa Estabrook on the show. Thank you so much for being here, Lisa. We're really excited to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. Ditto. Thank you. Thank you.
So you're calling in from Maine, right?
Indeed, from sunny Maine this
Excellent.
morning. It's a gorgeous day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We have a traditional first question on the Plant Cunning podcast, and it's how did you come to the plant path?
Yes, I've been ruminating on that for about a week and a half because I've been listening to your podcast for some time now, and as usual, my mind is like spiraling. It just goes in all different directions, and I made it way more complex than I would ever naturally just said. But my heart put me on the plant path, but I also don't think I'm necessarily specifically just on the plant path. So so I'd love to just share a little bit there because it's like I really feel like my path. I'm always the Triskelion, the triple spiral symbol, Celtic symbol, has been a really huge part of my life, and I don't know why for a long time, and I don't know why, but it's definitely part of my my own journey, and I've come to kind of recognize this triple aspect of the triple spiral in many different ways, but one of the ways is my work. So it's like the plant path, and then there's the deep spiritual, more mystical journey of soul, and then there's also my art, which I really feel is more any expression of creativity. I wouldn't, I call myself an artist, but that's a label that I accepted much later on in my life because the art is just a small piece of it, right? So my heart pulled me onto the plant path. My heart, the plants have always been there, but my mind has taken me way off of that for the majority of my life because I was sort of guided to do other things in my life, and I listened to these external experts in my family and society and all these things, but the plants always have this way of speaking to my heart. And when I was in states of of suffering or challenges or difficulties in my life, being out in nature, being in the garden, that's where I felt that sort of that wholeness, that peace, that grounded, that connectedness, all of that. And then my mind would then try to control that. Well, how can I manage that in my life? So my mind and my heart have been in this kind of you're going this way and you're going this way. And so the Soulflower journey in of itself brought me back into my heart space, and then I have been learning baby steps, like really small baby steps in the direction of my heart, since I started that particular journey. So that's sort of the long and short of it. But the plants have been my teachers, and I always have we want teachers, we ask for help, and I've never felt called to do higher education. I worked with Deb Sewell at Avena Botanicals for some time. I've done other things, but it's never been like this relationship with a teacher where I feel like I have a mentor. And then I finally realized that the plants were my mentors and the elements were my mentors and they were my mentors. And this journey of my own soul journey has been like to feel empowered in my own knowing and not really feeling like I have to constantly be memorizing or learning stuff outside of that. So it's been interesting because that really puts me in a space of like imposter syndrome frequently, like and trusting. Is this knowledge? Is what I'm feeling and is my relationship with this plant authentic? Is it really what I'm feeling? Is this the truth? It's always it's always a journey of trust. And I wish there was someone I've wished for mentors. I've wished for teachers, and and then all the time the plants are like, we're here, don't forget us, we're here. So
Yeah.
I've had them all along, but just didn't realize it, didn't know it.
So who are some of the plants that have especially guided your journey?
Dandelion. I think
What a good one.
yeah, Dandelion's been there the entire time, and Dandelion is on the cover of my of my oracle deck, and Dandelion is on the cover of actually everything that I've created. Because Dandelion was the first teacher that I realized I was in relationship with. And where I really came to realize that, yes, I am in relationship with you, and this conversation that I'm having with you is real, you know? And it's kind of a funny story when I realized that, because I was working on creating the Oracle deck, and I worked with, well, actually back up a little bit. I was working with Dandelion, just sketching and journaling with Dandelion. And I probably was doing that for about 6 months. And I was sitting outside on my lawn. It was right in the middle of spring. And there's like, my lawn is a dandelion field because that's the way I like it. And in my urban space, I know I tick off the neighbors a little bit, but it gives me a lot of joy to sit in my dandelion field. And I had 3 young children at the time, and they were running around the yard and, you know, just playing with the dandelions. And at the time, that movie Frozen was out with, you know, with Elsa, and she's singing Let It Go, Let It Go. And so my kids are like screeching around the yard singing Let It Go at the top of their lungs. And I just had this whole full body, like everything that I knew about Dandelion and everything that I had been journaling and sketching and feeling. It was like, oh, I finally get it. I finally get it. And it was just this giant aha moment that you know when you feel that, you know when you have a realization of resonance and truth throughout your whole body. And it was at that point that I realized that everything that I had been feeling and dreaming into was my conversation with Dandelion. And so, you know, Dandelion, the attribution I used was release on the cards, but you know, it's really about control. It's about how we try to control our lives, how we have this illusion of control over our lives. And isn't it really funny how everyone is battling and trying to control dandelions the world over? You know, in between all the, you know, and I understand the medicinals of dandelion as well. So that's part of the story for me, understanding this sort of detoxification of all these layers of beliefs and stories that I've held so tightly that are just proving to be just that, beliefs and stories. You know, they're illusions, they're not truth. And so this relationship that I have with Dandelion is just, it's really powerful. It's really powerful. And anyway, my biggest ally. But there's others that have been around for a long time too. So.
Well, dandelion is such a special plant. I mean, right now we're in dandelion season.
We are.
You know, our dandelions have just started flowering everywhere.
Yeah.
And we have little goslings, and they're just devouring the dandelion leaves.
Love them.
Love them.
Goslings.
And
funny.
Goslings, yeah. I can see the dandelion seed behind you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's such a great, you know, that's a release, you know, when it releases all the seeds.
Yeah.
But then I also think of, you know, it's diuretic action, and like it used to be called like the bedwetter, you know, because if you drank the dandelion tea at night, then you'd pee the bed. That's another kind of release.
Another kind of release for sure. You know,
yeah, and I think about the wishes that you're releasing when you blow as a child or adult. When you make the wish and blow it, you're releasing it to the universe. You're like, okay, now it's in your hands.
Yeah, that's exactly why I made it my my logo, because that's my, you know, I think we call it wishes when we're younger, but now that I'm older, I call it intentions, and working with intentions. And this is my heart and my mind duality here, you know, it's, you know, and trying to articulate what it is that my heart knows and wants to feel, and what my mind kind of expresses. And my intention really with this deck and with my work is not to tell people how to anything, not to teach anybody anything, but to empower them to know that their own heart is their best guidance system, you know. And so that's my intention that's going out on these seeds. That's my intention that's going out on these seeds. So
beautiful.
So what else have you learned from dandelion? I think that the control is such a big thing, especially in Western culture.
Yeah.
wanting to control your life and every little thing, just like that window shade. Keep out the light. But there seems to be a lot of lessons from Dandelion.
For sure. I think truly it's, we're working on reestablishing our connection with nature as a humanity, and our connection with life. It's not, we have this deep held belief that we can control life, that we can do X, Y, and Z from the experts that tell us what to do, that is going to guarantee us success. And then when something, life inevitably throws us a wrench or something else, we're thrown for a loop. We think that we're failing. We feel like we're doing something wrong. There's an awful lot of judgment that comes in. I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience. I am using the we, but I'm saying that from my own like learning, because I grew up with a lot of judgment around how I was in the world, and how my beliefs and how I wanted to express them. And I think life and nature as our teachers is always trying to to have us come back into that fold, into that flow, into that spiral of life. And so all of my, Dandelion really shows us that cycle so beautifully. It shows us the seed, it shows us the plant, it shows us the root in the fall, and then the way that it dies away, and shows us how to compost that which we are ready to compost. And so that kind of, that whole cycle has connected me back into nature's cycles and this flow of life in a way that I you know in our modern world, we're just not there. We turn the light on when it's dark. We don't honor the fact that it's dark. We eat strawberries in winter, and we have really very little concept of being in flow with nature itself, and everything that we do, in our parenting, our the way that we learn, do our work, the way that we are always sharing, well, what does the expert say, the way that we assign experts all this status, and instead of nature, and the way nature is showing us. I mean, it's astounding how far from the actual energy and nature of life that we have actually grown. And so Dandelion, Dandelion it's like peeling an onion. Every time I'm journeying with Dandelion, every time I'm working with Dandelion, I come to realize just thoughts that I have that are ready to be released, that are thoughts and beliefs that I have that are ready to be released. And when we say release as well, this is another thing that we hear a lot about. We have this idea that it's just sort of gone for good, and that's not how nature works. It's like we're recycling the same elements, the same things over and over and over again through our bodies and everywhere. And so to me, it really this idea of composting these ideas. And so as we are learning and growing, we're moving on a spiral, and every time we can compost and release and these ideas that we have come to find are restrictive or toxic, or whatever words you want to use, they're not serving life, they're not helping and supporting you to grow. Can we put them into the soil to nourish ourselves, to say, well, I've learned something from that. And and so then the next time that you are in a state of growth, or you're expanding, or you're going off down a path that you perhaps isn't the best for you, you have a remembering of that, and the soil it's like the soil of our lives, and we have something to reference and go back to help us make a different choice the next time around. So it's hard to express.
You're doing great. That's super, super clear. Yeah, I definitely think about that spiral visual in my own life of like, sometimes I'll find myself going around the spiral, going around the bend and being like, this looks familiar. I've been here before and it didn't serve me very well in the past. Why am I making the same mistake again? But at the same time, I'm a different person and I'm a different segment of that spiral. And I've learned from the past, and
Right.
I'm gonna, make different decisions, like you said, or grow a little bit bigger. And it's like, we're all just on our path, and, these things come up over and over,
Yeah.
but we can just do our best. So I think that's a really amazing lesson.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that it is a spiral path that you can't see that far ahead. We think we can plan it. And, I remember having my 5 year and my 10 year plan when I was in my 20s, isn't that funny now? Because now I'm like, I don't even know what's going to happen this afternoon,
Yeah.
let alone my 5 year or my 10 year plan. It's like, and it's like we do go to this state of judgment, like, okay, why am I making this mistake again?
Yeah.
Well, you're not. You're in a different place, and
Mhm.
you've composted these experiences. You've felt them, and you don't necessarily want to feel that way again. So you move into a different way. And so, there's something that I just keep that's coming up that I want to express is,
Mhm.
that I don't know. There's maybe a quote like, if the flower is not doing well, you don't blame the flower. You work on amending the soil in which the flower is growing in. And
Mhm.
this spiraling process where we are like just offering ourselves compassion and forgiveness and love, and putting that compost, creating that compost back for the next spiral around. And it is a journey of the heart, not the mind. And so I think that our minds have become way out of control on the human, for what their ability is to navigate our lives. We use them like almost exclusively, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah, got to bring it back to the heart, out of the
well,
head and the heart more often in this
well, we
culture.
do, we do in this culture and globally, as a humanity. So I
Yeah.
don't know. That's my own journey.
I was just thinking too about, like release isn't just letting it go, when you're releasing when you're blowing on the dandelion seeds, those go to a nice piece of compost or somewhere, and then start growing. They're like you're sowing seeds with the release.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And dandelions, I mean, they grow absolutely everywhere. They'll go and grow in a crack in the pavement, and to me, they're kind of like a first responder.
Mm,
They're kind of like, first aid for the earth, and kind of
yeah.
Yeah.
part of the way that this mind versus the heart. I feel like it's a big part of that message of Dandelion, because they're they're everywhere. They're offering us first aid. They're offering us this, like, release your mind, and you know reconnect in with your deep taproot back into the earth, and all these kinds of messages that Dandelion is sharing with
Mhm.
us. Yeah,
Yeah.
flower medicine
Yeah.
is, I mean, there's the herbal medicine of it all, but it really is just our stories. It's story medicine, and to me, it's story
Yeah.
medicine, and that's how the plants have taught me, is through my own life
Mhm.
and observing my own stories.
Yeah.
So
And that kind of brings up something you said earlier, where the plants and nature are your primary teachers. And that brought up feelings of imposter syndrome, or like questioning, am I getting the right message from the plants, or is this just my own ego, my own head, or whatever? And I'm wondering, on your journey, how you've come to differentiate between, maybe just passing thoughts of your own, mind versus thoughts from the plants. And that might lead us into the Oracle deck too, but
sure. Well, I've come to sort of believe that they're not necessarily separate in that way. We have this idea that we want plants and other beings even to communicate in the same way that we communicate, right? Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of
you
silly,
know,
huh?
we just don't, so like when you communicate through your heart, everything is felt. Everything
Yeah.
is just, it's felt, and you know what it feels like when something feels good and aligned.
Mhm.
I mean, our whole bodies are just designed to feel, and we spend most of our time like suppressing that. suppressing
Yeah.
that with our mind. We don't want to feel things. And if we feel something bad, well, then what the hell's causing this? And I have to, and you go back into your mind to try to eliminate or search out what is it that's making me feel bad. And you're completely out of your heart again. It's like, it's causation.
Yeah.
It becomes linear and we're off the spiral. And so for me, well, my husband used to laugh at me because I have this running verbal outward conversation with my plants, like you have with a nonverbal child or your animals or, your goslings. I'm sure you chat with them, right? And over time, as you're building your relationship with them, pets, plants, people, you come to know their quirks. You come to know what they like and they dislike, and you come to know when they're thriving and when they're not thriving. And so this ongoing conversation, I just where it was nonverbal, I just had to trust. I had to trust. Trust. And it's taken many, many cycles. It's taken many, many spirals to actually trust that wisdom that I'm remembering. And I think that we all hold this earth wisdom. There's many, many people talking about this and the way that we know mentally that we need to reconnect in ways that we're exploring. And then there's the whole, um, looking into and appropriating other systems that, we're trying to make sense of our lives. So there's that whole part of it. But I think each of us has our own indigenous wisdom in our cellular bodies, because we are made of the earth. And when you're ingesting the plants, you're taking in their stories, you're taking in their wisdom, and it's creating the cells that you have as your body. And I don't know, I feel like there's just this whole kind of relationship there that we're just beginning to understand in our minds, but we know it from our hearts. We know when we eat something if it makes us feel good, right? We know when we're viewing a sunset, that feels good and feels beautiful and feels great. And we know when we're, I don't know, we know in our physical body. So I keep saying no because that's a mental thing, but it's a felt thing. It's a heartfelt thing. So for me,
I'm
just
I think that way of so I think that that way of understanding and relating is just so much more sophisticated than thinking. It's like you can have so much more information. You can analyze it, with your heart, with their feeling, whereas to actually analyze it with your mind would take way too long. It's like somebody
that's true.
who can calculate these very complex figures just like that. I don't think they're necessarily analyzing every little thing. They just feel it.
Right. I mean, and the teachers, the herbalists, the practitioners that are, it's like we have these stores of memories and knowledge, but it's only so good as the individual who can feel or connect with the person that they're working with or supporting to really feel what it is that they need. Because it's like there's it's not this cause and effect thing. They might need emotional help. Well, everything is emotional, right? Underneath more than the physical, but then we access that maybe through the physical. So it's like we can't rationalize everything. We think we can, and that's the scientific method, right? We think we can rationalize, and we think that we can figure it out and compartmentalize nature, and this is how you take care of this environment. But it's not. It's so much bigger than that. We have so little. We don't really know how it's all intertwined and how it's all interconnected, because it's unseen, because we can't see it.
Yeah, it's too big for our mind to grasp.
It's too, yeah, it is. As is spirit, as is all of it. It's just, it's what's that word that means ineffable? It's ineffable. This world that we live in, it is ineffable, and it's a joy to relate to it.
Yeah.
it's for me, when I'm in my head, because I don't want to speak in the past, because often in my head now, but when I'm trying to figure things out and be in that place of, where I'm trying to control or understand, it's not a place of joy. It's for me, it's a place of, yeah, limitation, suffering, even. Like joy is just like that childhood wonder, and like, oh, I wonder how this is gonna feel, or I wonder how this is gonna connect. And I don't know. I'm rambling, which I do, but I like.
Well, I mean, and there the scientific method is very useful for certain things, but it doesn't you can't, there are certain things it's not useful for, and those are some of those things are things that, for instance, divination is useful for. And like you put out this oracle deck. It was a couple of years ago now, but it's a cool deck. And I've been using divination tools for over 10 years, various, tarot, runes. I'm doing Hori astrology now. Um, but I found it to be very, very helpful for being able to access that wisdom that the mind can't analyze that quickly,
Sure.
But so how did you get into divination? How did you have the seed for the oracle deck?
Well, the Oracle deck was the creation of it was my healing journey. It was the plants. I, it's sort of funny because I pulled a card before I started speaking to you, and Hellebore was the card that I pulled for myself, and Hellebore is empowerment, and
Ooh.
Hellebore was the flower that told me to create the deck. Hellebore was the one that said, you know what to do, you need to
Okay.
create this deck, because for me, it was like I was in my early 40s, and I was not happy, I was not healthy, I was not, and I had done everything that I was told to do, right, by the experts, by my family, lovingly. I'm not saying it's not coming from a place of love, but I had done all this stuff, and I was dealing with really chronic headaches. I still have headaches, but I was in a place of, why is this happening to me? Self-pity, miserable with it. And I had 3 young kids, and just why don't I feel better? Why am I not happier? All those kinds of things. And so it was the plants that took me on this journey. And it was 2 years of creating the deck. And it was I actually self-published it in 2016 was when it came out. So it's been out 6 years. I can't do math. 7 years now, and now it's actually been picked up by Fintorn Press, which I couldn't have really, come to a better publisher to usher it into its more grown-up version of itself. But it's sort of like it grew up. But each flower that came into the deck was spontaneous. I had this idea that, okay, I'm going to do these flowers, these plants, because all of them grow in my gardens or they grow in the woods around my house. And I had this control, I had this outline, this plan, and they totally took me on a different path. And so each flower that I was working on for the deck would make itself known to me at that time. And then the way it would unfold would be like I started to realize that everything that was happening in my life at that time was relevant to the medicine of the flower. So it was like I call it journeying with the plant spirits, but I'm not in an altered state of consciousness like in a shamanic journey. I'm in my everyday waking consciousness. I'm in my everyday consciousness working with this plant, and everything that's happening in my life at that time, the emotional, the physical, the mental issues that I was playing with, the flower would be completely relevant for that from my medicinal understanding, but then also it just became, as I deepened my relationship with each, I would then really understand more about what their medicine was, their energetic medicine was. So that's really how the deck came to being. And I got to the end of the deck. I mean, the lost flower was periwinkle, and it was Vinca minor growing through all the woods around my house. And it was
Oh yeah.
this time of year, it was completely in full bloom, even, and there was snow on the ground. And
Wow.
there it was in full bloom. And I'm like, oh, you're calling me, so you kind of know how plants kind of wave at you, they get your attention. And
Mhm.
and so Periwinkle's like, okay, it's time to publish this deck. And my background is in graphic design, and so I had done the art, I did the layout of the cards, and I was controlling it. I'm controlling the whole creative process, and I didn't try to find a publisher. I wanted to publish it myself because I wanted full creative control over this. Hello Dandelion, still sitting here behind me, and um, and I just printed like 500 of them. And if I had known then what I would be doing now, 7 years later, and the evolution of this, I probably would never have self-published it in the first place. But I got the very clear message from Periwinkle: it's time to publish it. It's time to go on to the next spiral of your journey, and tie everything up and move on. And so and I really felt deeply like, even though I'm not an expert, I'm not a flower essence practitioner, I'm not an herbalist, all those things I am in essence. And it was time to share that with the world, just to share my process and share my journey. And oh my goodness, it's just been growing and growing at nature's pace, which is manageable. People are like, well, I remember, grow your business into a 6-figure, this blah, 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 which is very quick and very, it's not nature's pace. It's really forcing growth. And we don't, so the whole, like, even from when it was published to what I'm doing now, sharing this process, mentoring people with plant spirits, and, just all those things have been just an evolution in my own personal growth and a sharing of that process with others. And it's always been, an underlying intention to grow myself. And what's the next way that I can expand and grow myself? And what can I learn next about myself, which is not separate from nature, right? And or any of you, anybody. And so it's just like, keep leaning in.
Right.
What's next? Lean in. And now it's published, and now this deck is, I had to let go of this Dandelion again. It took me 2 years to say okay to a publishing thing because I had to let it go. It's like my baby. It's like letting go of a child, and that process started simultaneously at the same time as I was taking my oldest to college. It's like, it's everything's intertwined. Everything is
Interesting.
it's not separate. What's happening, you can go and, your life, everything that's happening in your life is serving you and to grow, whatever source it comes from, and we just judge everything. Well, that's a bad source, so that's a good source. But anyway, again, rambling and spiral thoughts.
That's good.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, we like rambles.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So yeah, divination.
So you name the oracle deck.
What
was that again?
Yeah, so divination and
Can you say that one last time?
Divination and using an oracle deck, for me, because I think that was maybe your initial question, is, it's not, in our busy world that is filled with distractions, it's a way to bring myself back into my heart. So, nature is a mirror for us. The plants are mirrors, and oracle cards are mirrors. And so it's not anything that you don't know. When you pull a card, or when you're using, a pendulum or eye muscle check, it's not anything that you don't know. It's just that your mind's getting in the way with judgment. So when you use divination, it's a way to just go straight to your heart. And what do you need to know right now? What needs to be brought into your conscious awareness that's maybe in an unconscious place right now? So that's how I use the cards. That's how I use, divination in my life, oracle cards anyway. But and I also muscle check, which is like using a pendulum, a yes or no. It has to be a yes or no. Is this right for me? Is this, whatever? Because our minds really do try to complicate things and interfere with what we're actually feeling. So until we can trust the yes, the physical yes, or the physical no, then I use muscle checking, or I've never
So
really.
how do you do muscle checking? Are you like standing and your body sways and one way's a yes, one way's a
No,
no,
I,
or?
I use a simple finger lock. So I use the my pinky and my thumb together. I'm like, is that my
Okay.
thumb? Okay, and then I use my other two fingers like that to break the lock. So if I say, my name is Lisa, which is a full yes, and I try to break this lock with my pushing apart with my fingers, it's a strong lock. And if I say, my name is Gertrude, you know, I get a strong no. I get a strong no. So for me, it's a yes or no that way. I mean, I know people teach muscle checking, like where, you can play with this with each other, um, put your arm up and then have, put your arm up, AC, and then have Isaac, he can push down on your arm, and if it's right here at the end of it, like a lever. So when you're in a strong yes, he won't be able to push it down, or you'll be stronger. Whereas if it's a
Okay.
no, it'll just flop down. It's kind of, that's
Yeah.
using my body in that way, because your body's so
That's so cool.
wise. Your body's so wise, and your body is speaking to you. And I know we talk about the elements like earth, air, fire, water, ether, but I also, then there's the elemental beings, and I've I think that there's an elemental being for each of our bodies as well, a deva, or whatever you want to call it, for each of our bodies, and it's wanting to communicate with us, wanting to share things with us. And that's a whole nother tangent, a whole nother conversation. But anyway, but that's how I use muscle checking. So, and I use it often as well, like with food, or something. I'm like, does my body want this, food, or I can use it to check. I can use it to check, tincture drops. Sometimes you only need a few, and I'll be able to get a yes. I only need 3 drops. How many drops do I need? 1 drop. Yes. 2 drops. Yes. 3 drops. No. And so I know I'm just going to take 2 drops of a tincture or flower essence or whatever it is. So I use that a lot in my body. And then I use the oracle cards. For me, there's many concentric rings. So I have a plant spirit that I have that's my guide for the whole entire year.
Oh,
And I have a
cool.
plant spirit. I have a plant spirit for each moon cycle. I have a plant spirit for each week, and I have a plant spirit for each day. And then I also can, and they interact. It's like I see it like an atom. You know what an atom looks like, with a nucleus in the
Yeah.
center, and the protons and whatever are spinning around, each on their own orbit. But they're all making up the whole, right? They're all creating the whole. So each of those plant spirits is energetically rotating around me. And then, of course, you've got all the cycles of life too. What time of the day is it? What the lunar cycles, the solar cycles. Oh yeah, it's a lot, but it's all so. So when people are starting to use my oracle deck, I teach them. I don't teach them. I suggest that they do a daily pick, because it really is about building relationship, and picking a card on a daily basis is the way that we learn to deepen our relationship with that flower. So if you keep picking the same flower when something is happening in your life, you start to kind of understand how that flower works in your life, and then you start to see that flower in real life too. So and maybe it's dandelion, and you be having some thoughts about somebody or work or experiencing something, and you pull a card and it's dandelion, and then you're going to meet with that person, and you'll see the dandelion flower, outside of their office growing in a really awkward place, and then, or something like that. So then it'll bring that back into your conscious awareness. So it's really about, making your awareness conscious, your understanding conscious, so we move to a place of unconscious all the time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think pulling a daily card is really a cool practice, but I love your way of pulling one for the year and the moon cycle and the week. I think that's a really cool idea, and I want to try that myself.
Yeah, and so I put them up on my altar. I have altars all over my house. There's my weekly altar, there's my daily altar. There's my altar right here, which is, so my plant spirit for the year is chamomile, which is stability. So I put it on my altar here. You put it somewhere where you see it. You put the card, or, that's why I use the tattoos, but you put that somewhere where you're going to see it often. I put it on my phone as the wallpaper. If I'm working with a particular plant spirit for a moon cycle, it's the wallpaper on my phone, because, we pick up our phones so many times. And every time I do, I'm like, reminded of the message of the flower that I'm working with. And you, oh my goodness, the way the universe works, it's like when I'm needing to know something, when I'm needing to make that connection about part of the message for me, then the events and the experiences and the stories that I'm having will be simultaneous to me noticing that flower on my phone. I don't know, the way not expressing that very well. Like say I need to be reminded to be in my heart. I'm working with Pansy right now, and you're driving along and you're kind of in your mind and you're thinking about other things that are happening, and then you pull up to a traffic light, and then you'll see Pansy growing in the box right there, and it'll bring me right back into, oh, I've got to be in my heart. I'm noticing I'm in my head. So it's like, it's just this constant, so that's why, again, it's like why I call it journeying in our everyday consciousness. It's not, and I've tried shamanic journeying, I've tried those sort of practices, and I don't, it's not my toolkit. It's not in my toolkit, that sort of process. So
is that who's on your hand? Pansy?
That's Pansy. So I have Pansy right there. So I made the tattoos. I made the tattoos because I need help with this. I need to be reminded of this intention that I'm working with Pansy right now. So that's why I made them. I made them for myself. You could also just write Pansy on the back of your hand, or you could write something on the back of your hand to remind you of the plant spirit that you're working with right then. If you're learning about a plant, just bring it into your conscious awareness. Whether you're learning about it medicinally, you're journeying with it within your clinical herbalism classes, or whatever you're doing to learn a plant, bring it into your conscious awareness all the time, and then pay attention to what's happening around you, because it's all interrelated. It's all part of the medicine. It's all part, and the astrology of the time, even. I mean, I know you are interested in all of that too. It's all related, and it's all there serving us to know ourselves better and know these plants better. And it's amazing. I love how it's all interwoven.
Totally.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I've never been guided on a shamanic journey before, but I've definitely meditated with plants, and I've had my own experiences, sort of like you are, living the plant experience on the day to day. That's sort of more my style as well.
Yeah.
Have you, Isaac?
Not shamanic journey per se. I've done other kind of ceremonies and kind of like, like scrying, which is more waking conscious dreaming, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a meditation.
Yeah.
And I definitely
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, he just said dreaming, and it reminded me of that I'm like an avid dreamer, and I like to write down my dreams and incorporate the messages from that into my life as well.
Yeah, dream time, we're probably in a closer state to the plants, the way that they communicate in symbols and knowings and yeah, bizarre stuff. But yeah, the
Definitely.
shamanic, the sham. I think I think that each of us in the as we reclaim our own ways of relating to the earth. I mean, I wasn't raised within any particular religion. I wasn't raised, you know, with any set of sort of dogma or rules around spiritual growth or how to relate to the earth. And so I've come, you know, and so a lot of parts of the trusting piece was me learning that I can create my own ceremony and I create my own rituals. I mean, even as much as I brush my teeth every day in the same way, or I make my tea in the morning, my ritual of putting a tattoo, or you know, it's like these are the ways. Ritual is really just a way to understand our own lives better. And we, you know, I love sharing the ways that I do it with people in my community, but I also love hearing about how everyone else does it, you know, and and just to really empower us all to know that we can make it up as we're going along. There's no one right way to do it. We are making it up, and even ceremony too. You know, it's like I really felt very inhibited and. Um, am I doing this right? Am I creating a ceremony? Am I calling in the directions the right way? And I had to let go of it again, Dandelion, let go of all of that. You know, I'm in my own relationship with these plants and the ceremonies that have come to, you know, my new moon ceremony, I pull the plant spirits for the year ahead on the winter solstice, and it's been something that's just always evolving, just like my relationships with the plants. But it's just play. It's play and
Mm.
curiosity
Yeah.
and and I feel like that's the gift of it all. And just wanting to encourage people that you know, we don't have to, there's no one right way to be with the plants. There's no one right way. There's no one right diet. There's no one right medicine for it, anything. It's all bio-individual,
Yeah.
and it's all about us be feeling empowered to make the choices that our bodies want and that our bodies are calling for and our hearts are calling for. And that's the journey, right? That's the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a really strong magic in like discipline sometimes and like learning a system, but I think the most powerful is when you get beyond that and what works for you, you know, like
Right.
that's the most powerful thing is what you design yourself in conjunction with your spirits, with your plant allies or your guides, or what your
Right.
inner self.
Right. I mean, and that's another aspect of the dandelion medicine for me is, you know, I kind of created my own prisons, if you like, out of structures that were, you know, that I thought was the right way to do things, you know, and so it's like learning a system, and then that's the only way to look at something. Created a prison. I don't know if I'm expressing this well, but that created a prison for me where I couldn't grow beyond that in you know, in ways that I wanted, that my heart was calling for me to grow. And so it's like looking at everything that we learn exterior, because we need each other, and we need to learn and share our stories and learn from each other what we're how we're making sense of life and the world around us. But ultimately it's our own relationship, you know, we're at the center of we're at the center, we're all interconnected, we're not separate, but we're each creating our own experience in every moment. And so for me, a lot of the structures that I learned from a mental place, and I can't remember. It's like I don't know how to tell you. I can't tell you how many herbals I've read and how many things I've done, but it's all gone. It's all out of my head. I don't remember it anymore, and because it's now more play and what's feeling right in the moment, and so it enhanced my life, but it wasn't it ended up creating more of a prison for me, that I needed to evolve through. So
Yeah, that's a great reminder to not get stuck in like form
yeah,
and to allow yourself to play. And I feel like that's been the theme of today's conversation, is like the heart, is like accessing that heart point.
yeah. I love the way you put that. I love the way you put that.
Yeah.
Not get stuck in form. That's beautiful. That's exactly, because form is not even, form is not even set and finite either. It's like always evolving.
Right.
So, mm,
It is. Yeah, for sure.
Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. That's I think that's the Heart Sutra.
Oh, cool.
Maybe it's the Diamond Sutra. I don't know. It's one of those sutras. But
so we watched a video of you in your garden, and it's just so beautiful. It's like partly wooded and epic flower beds. And I just would love to hear about what is growing right now, what you're planting, like what's present for you in your garden space.
so I'm in the cleanup, I guess, phase of gardening here in Maine. My gardens, when I moved into this house, it was all pretty suburban lawn, and a couple of foundation shrubs, that kind of thing. And it's very wooded, so I have a very sort of part shade, part sun situation going on, and acid soil everywhere. But the process of these gardens has been, it's really been a very what I want to call a co-creative process. So and doing it, I'm self-taught, how I learn with nature. I'm not self-taught. Plants teach me, right? All the time. I don't like it here. I don't want to be here. But also I would just let nature like drop all the pine needles, and then and then I would just cover it with compost, and then I would start to see what was coming up. And so I've had so many plants. I've had, just off the top of my head, elder and celandine, and lots of the little bell things that I'm gonna what are those little white toxic things that are growing? Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley. Yeah, we all three at the same time. Lily of the Valley.
Yeah, just coming up everywhere, and just medicinals that how plants have that way of like yarrow, medicinal yarrow has just come up everywhere, and I love that, and mullein, and I like to see where they're coming up and let them grow. And then so like the beds have just been expanding every year. And the first couple of years I like put edging in and said, okay, here's going to be my foundation bed, and here's going to be the apple tree bed, and literally, like, again, dandelion, 2 years later, they're like, pull out that edging, we don't want to be contained. And so it's like art. When you're painting and you're doing watercolors, you're kind of constantly adding more water and seeing where it flows, and seeing how the gardens want to be and come up. And so that's, and I'm like, okay, there's a path that wants to be through here, and and then my husband will give me some stone for my birthday to manifest that path. Or so everything that's in my garden, I try to keep it in there. I try to just bring back, if I have to trim a tree, or a tree falls down or something, I chip it all up and I use that back in the gardens. And so it's just a constant evolution, and it's constantly changing. Every year is different, what comes up and where. And so I just love the process. It's like art. It's like the never ending canvas, that's out there. And so, yeah, I'm about to go and harvest some hostas. I've never eaten hostas before, but I want to try that. I keep seeing that where people are eating their hostas, and I have plenty of those from the original plantings here. I just divide and move, and people give me stuff, and so I just put that in, and
yeah,
I don't know. I have a very small vegetable area, but that's not my strength at all. Again, I think that's it. Just, well, I guess I'm kind of tough.
Hard.
Can be, yeah.
It's hard, and I'm like, that's not, I like to grow medicine more, so I like to harvest, and I just, there was a whole blackberry patch area, and I just dug up the blackberry, and we'll make a tincture with the blackberry root and pass it on to someone else that they want to replant some. And so I just, I don't know, it's just play. It's play, and I'm committed to it. Every morning I go out in my garden for right now 60 to 90 minutes because it hurts if I stay out any longer. my body
Yeah.
tells me that's it. That's all I can do. My mind is like, no, I want to stay more. I want to do more. And again,
Yeah.
it's always like the lesson of patience and nature's pace, and everything gets done. It's not a chore. It's play, and it's where I feel happiest, and it's where it gives me all my inspiration. It's a sanctuary. It's a sanctuary for me. So
Yes, definitely.
yeah. So I
Yeah, I definitely. I I feel like gardening is a wonderful art form as well as meditation and exercise.
yeah.
It's just everything in one.
Yeah, it could
And you get
be
medicine or food out of it too.
Yeah.
Beauty.
Yeah, it couldn't be more perfect.
Yeah.
Get
Totally.
get people back in the gardens, and I like to see that that's trending right now too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think people are realizing how alienated we are from nature in society and trying to get back, and how unstable, fragile like food systems are, and transportation systems. So it's a good time to garden.
Yeah.
Always, any time is a good time to garden though.
For sure.
But
And if you don't have a garden,
it's
just
also a
having
skill that helps over time.
well, yeah. I mean, people say I don't have a green thumb, and I like to kind of say, well, it's just practice and trusting in yourself. Just like I think everybody's an artist. Just have a set of judgments we need to let go of, a set of
Yeah.
beliefs and stories that we need to let go of, so that we can embrace our inner artist, our creator, our inner gardener, all those things, tender. And I love how the gardens really, gardening for me, it's taking care of myself as well as taking, in the process of taking care of the land, I'm taking care of myself in so many ways. And yeah, I think
So true.
Yeah.
And I think people are like, well, I don't have a relationship with nature. They don't have a relationship with nature, or they think that they don't. And I like to remind people, well, so how do you feel when you go and you catch that beautiful sunset, or when you receive that bouquet of flowers that somebody has just given you? How do you feel when you receive that? You definitely are in relationship with nature. Again, more beliefs that we need to let go of. We're just remembering the truth that we are all connected and part of nature, and we are not even just a part of nature, we are nature. So
yeah. That's a great point. Good reminder. So I think we have time for one more question. And your Oracle deck and your business, the name of it is Soulflower. And I'm wondering what Soulflower means to you. What is a Soulflower?
Well, I guess I was just given that name. I was given that name as I was creating this, because I think this process of growing myself and this process of being in relationship with the flowers was me remembering my own divinity, my own soul, my own humanity, and all of that connected. I mean, the flowers, I think I'm just a complicated houseplant, is the way I put it. I'm no different. I'm no different from the flowers. I have needs. I have, things that I want to express. But the flowers, for me, they are just so in a state of grace, and in a state of like acceptance about who they are, if their leaves are askew or they're a little gangly this year. I mean, they're just in this they just have this vibration of acceptance and unconditional love, and just to me, that's what my soul is too. That's who we all are. That we are just all this incredible. We're all this light, this love, and it flows through all. And the flowers are just mirroring that to me. So for me, it's been that kind of that remembering. That's that remembering. So again, like all of this, I was given, and I just kind of created, and it's later on that I'm understanding or coming up with an explanation or a story around things. But yeah, it's called the Soulflower Plant Spirit Oracle, and I also have I just created a coloring book, which
Oh,
is
cool.
it's really high quality pages, because I like to be able to color with paint and glue and pressed flowers and those sort of things. But it's also it's I calling it a field guide, a plant spirit field guide, because it has the message from the plant spirits as I felt it, and it has some keywords in there around it, and it has touches on a little bit my understanding the doctrine of signatures and how that kind of relates to the plant spirit medicine as well. And the invitation is to create and color, and that's another meditative state of where you can turn your mind off for a while and just play and feel. And that's the space that the plants communicate through. That's the place. So anything that supports that, and I think coloring does, so that's why. So I created that, and there's a journal. I have a journal. I have tattoos. I have cards. I mean, there's a lot, and I write a lot, because that's a big way that I process my plant spirit journeys. So in the waning part of the moon, when I'm looking at what's been happening in my life and the plant spirit that I've been journeying with intentionally, part of the way I integrate what it is that I am remembering is through writing. And so I have a plant spirit deep dive blog where I share those kind of monthly ruminations. And I feel like that's a big resource for others, because if you can read somebody else's story and if you resonate with it, that's going to really help your own learning and your own remembering. So that's a resource there. And people can play with the deck too online.
And where can folks find all that?
Yeah, it's also my website.
What's your website for folks who are listening?
Yeah, it's mysoulflower.com, and you can go online and there's a free daily pick there. I don't ask for your email or anything. You can just go on and it takes you through that process of picking a card right there. So you can just play with it and see how those plant spirits want to show up for you.
That's awesome. I love that. And real quick before we part, we mentioned that some of the cards that you have are Dandelion and Hellebore and how do you say it?
Hellebore.
Hellebore. I always mess that one up. And then
Vinca minor.
Yeah. So what other plants can people expect to see in there?
Well, there are
Name
a
a
lot
few.
of traditional medicinal plants, because those are my allies and friends. So there's yarrow and nettles and bee balm and dandelion. I said, of course, there's 44 different plants in there. Pansy, heartsease pansies. I'm working with now chamomile. So there's a lot of those medicinals. And then there's also like iris, and well, that's also medicinal, but daylilies and also edible. And daffodils and hydrangeas. They all grow in my gardens here in the Northeast, and many of them grow everywhere. And they're not necessarily native to this area, but they grow in my gardens and all around the world. So I think there are 44 very accessible plants. And most of them people are familiar with. I think there's some that plumbago is in there, which is it's the same flower as Serato, buck flower essence. It's that blue flower. So there's some that are that are a little bit more obscure, but most of them I think people would recognize and know right off the bat. So
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Love it.
would you like me
Well,
to pick you a card?
is there anything else?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's do that. Yes.
Let's pick a card actually for anybody who's listening.
Please.
And we can just, you know, invite, you know, the Soulflower, the plant spirits, and the devas, you know, that whoever is listening to this conversation at whatever time and whenever place, that this message is relevant and helpful for all. And I will just pick the card and read the message, and everyone can interpret it. Oh, echinacea. So there's another one that's on the echinacea, and the message is
Oh,
consciousness.
that's beautiful.
The message, the attribution for echinacea, the
Okay.
soul quality is consciousness. And I feel like as a humanity, we're in a really powerful time of very fast expanding consciousness of where we are and who we are. And so the message is, echinacea stimulates and awakens your consciousness, helping break up and release outdated personal stories, emotions, and attachments that are holding you back from positive growth and self-realization, and awakening awareness of your true self when you have forgotten or lost connection. So I'll leave that for everyone else to contemplate how that relates in your own life. And maybe we all need a little immune stimulation, right? A little immune system stimulation, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Heck yeah. Very cool. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you, Lisa, for being on the show. This has been a wonderful talk, and it's been great to get to know you and
Really great.
yeah, and Dandelion and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing a conversation and sharing some stories, and it's really wonderful to actually to explore my plant path as part of it. So
Yes.
Cool. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
thank
Well,
you.
thanks again, Lisa. Enjoy the